In today's show, the Trailblazers have made the terrible decision to broadcast all of their road games remotely this year. It's bad for you, and it's a decision that does not reflect well on the team. Plus, the NBA schedule is out. We're going to talk about what the 82 regular season games are going to look like for your Trailblazers. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Start your day listening to Locked On Blazers. Tell your friends to do the same. We're still 3 days a week as we roll through August. As we get back towards training camp, we'll be 5 days a week, the only daily Trailblazers podcast. But for now, 3 days a week, thrice a week, right here, wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you're listening and tell your friends to do the same so you have something to talk about. We got a lot to talk about in today's show. We're going to start with the Trailblazers broadcast news. Reporting from multiple media outlets suggests the Blazers are not planning on sending any of the broadcasters, television or radio, on the road this season, and that is super whack. Plus, the NBA schedule is here. A quick schedule breakdown and why the Blazers have a really important stretch to open this season. Let's start with the news, though. First reported on 620 Rip City Radio by Dwight James and Chad Dewing, the Blazers reportedly plan to not have their broadcast teams, that is radio and television, go on the road. They will be doing all remote broadcasts. This was first reported, and then friend of the program, Sean Highkin, who has the newsletter Rose Garden Report, also has a podcast component. Sean, a former guest on the show, did some reporting, did what reporters do, and got Blazers president Dwayne Hankins on the record responding to that news. And Hankins said in part that that decision had been fully made. He denied that decision is a done deal, and that the Blazers are still debating what they do. But if they do decide to do that, wink, 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 if they do decide to do that, Hankins says the following. This is from Sean Highkin of Rose Garden Report. Thank you, Sean, for your wonderful reporting. Hankins says, "We plan to incorporate lessons we've learned through doing remote broadcasts through COVID-19 over the last 2 years and see if we can't be more efficient as we look to invest in other areas to improve our broadcast." Right. The way to improve the broadcast is to keep everyone at home and invest in other remote areas. Here's what we learned during COVID-19. The remote broadcasts for all live sports were awful. They made the viewing experience worse, and they made the already difficult job of calling a game on television, calling a live sporting event via radio or television, significantly harder. You don't have the chemistry of being in the arena. You don't have the little observations of sitting down by the court. Or, in some gyms, you sit up in the lower bowl, but you can see more than just what is given to you on the broadcast. And you do not have the in-person reporting from Trailblazers sideline reporter Brooke Olzendam. The thing that Brooke is best at is that she is incredibly affable and people like her. So when she does interviews, they like her and they give her good stuff. That is the skill. That is what makes her so good at the job. Well, doing it over video conferencing or just in your ear with some headphones on strips her of her skill. This is why it's a problem. Doing television, specifically radio too, but television specifically, is an incredibly public job. And the people in charge of you are making you actively worse at your job. Like, I don't expect Kevin Calabro or Lamar Hurd, the Blazers broadcast team, or Brooke Olzendam to comment on this stuff. One, it happens at all of our jobs where someone over your head makes a decision that's bad. Maybe not. Some of you have jobs where that doesn't happen, but pretty common, right? Someone makes a decision over your head that's bad. It makes your life more difficult. But sure, when your life is more difficult and you have a desk type job, like a spreadsheet type job, it's not public facing. your struggles and making it harder is not as sort of obvious as it will be for when it's hard to identify who that was on first glimpse on the television, and the camera cuts away and you do not see who committed the foul. You do not see who committed the turnover. You do not see who the ball was being passed to. Or maybe you say it wrong and then you have to go back and correct. Maybe you're a split second slow because you're trying to watch the TV in front of you and get the broadcast right. It is worse. And I don't care about the Blazers reinvesting efficiency. The reason they are doing this is to save money. It's a absolutely 150 million% financially motivated. It is not about efficiency or improving the broadcast or finding better ways to spend the money or reinvest those funds. It is about saving money. And we can do some back in the napkin math here. There's broadcasters you see out in front, Kevin and Lamar and Brooke. There's a handful of other folks who travel to make a live television broadcast possible. It's probably like 6 or 8, depending on the trip, sometimes maybe as few as 5. But it's camera folks, it is people who are making motion graphics, it is the directors, it is producers of the program. It's a small team of folks who make the Blazers broadcast possible. Them being on site allows them to make plans, to get ideas, to coordinate and make the broadcast stronger. But you got to pay for those people to have hotels, and you got to pay for those people to have food. And so the back of the napkin math suggests it's something like somewhere between, in the low 6 figures, right? $250,000. It's not nothing. Say it's $500,000. It's not nothing. I mean, it's not that much money, but say it is. Say it's $500,000, right? Say it's the cost of hotels is skyrocketing. It's $500,000. If you don't want to invest the money, you can't lie about it. We've seen how bad the broadcasts are remotely. We have plenty of data to suggest that it's worse. And anyone you've spoken to who works in the TV world, I don't know the radio side as well. It's going to be tougher for Travis Demers to do his job. It is incredibly hard to call radio play-by-play of a sport live. It's going to be even harder to call it off a monitor. But I'm not as familiar with sort of the radio production side. So I'll talk specifically about the TV here. Anyone you have spoken to who works in live television production knows that the remote broadcasts were worse and they were harder. They made it harder to do the job. They made it harder to do a good job. They were worse. During the sort of initial onset of COVID, even the national television broadcasts were remote. Safety was important. Keeping people out of the, fewer humans in the gym was a priority. We're not at that stage anymore in American life. We're not reducing the number of people in big arenas anymore. We're well beyond that. And to the Blazers' credit, last year in the early winter, or earlier this year in the winter, in the sort of that January, in the early January, when Omicron was whipping across the country and there's tons of infections and all, and COVID was spiking even in our sort of post-vaccine times, other teams pulled their broadcasts off the road. At one point, only 15 teams were traveling. More than half the league was staying at home for road games. This was a common thing happening in 2021. It is a recent occurrence. This is like this winter, right? The Blazers were one of the few teams that held out as long as they could. And I should have said this at the time, but you got to applaud them for that. Eventually, they did end up doing a handful of remote broadcasts just for sort of safety reasons and to keep the thing moving. You don't want to send more broadcast folks on the road. It's just more humans, more chances, more infections, all of these things, right? You want to keep the basketball players healthy so you can keep playing games. It's a money-making industry. There is no read on this that suggests that it's anything other than a money choice. And I'll say this. I had heard whispers of this prior to the reporting on 620. And the whispers I heard was not that it was a possibility, is that it was a done deal. It's a done deal. I haven't been able to confirm that since then. Just sort of chatting around to people who work in Blazerland, in and around Blazerland, I should say. It doesn't sound like this is something they're considering. And if you're responding to reporters and giving them a quote on the record, here's what it is, I think the decision has been made. And it's worse for you, the fan. But here's what I'll say. you can probably bully them into backing out of this plan. It is so bad and so stupid to make the television broadcast so much worse. Nobody's investing any money in regional sports networks anymore. Nobody at any level is investing any money in sports networks anymore. Root Sports doesn't have basically any programming. They show the games, they make the money off the games, and they peace out, and they show other stuff. They do a good job with the Mariners, but they don't have a footprint here in Portland. The Blazers are, I'm sure, feeling some of that, is that there's just sort of less stuff to sell around the game, right? Less stuff to sell around the television broadcast. But you can bully them. And here's my advice to you, dear listener. Contact these people. I'm not going to dox them or whatever, but their information is publicly available. You can find how to contact the people who make decisions for the Trailblazers. Contact them and tell them that it sucks. And then do it again the next week, and then do it again the week after that, and then tell your friends to do the same. Apply some public pressure. I think the way to deal with billionaires saving money, and this is the Allen estate. I'm not talking about, I know Jody Allen is the face of this. This is the Allen estate. Allen estate. It's the ownership group, right? It's Vulcan. You can publicly bully Vulcan enough for them to back out of this. I believe in you, dear listener. I believe that you can bully these people enough publicly for them to go back on this decision. Just complain nonstop. Just complain nonstop. Complain in formal, public ways. Don't just post an angry thing on Twitter. Write an email. Find the email, write the email, do it. Do it. And tell them every week. Tell them every week it sucks. And when they do the first remote broadcast, tell them it sucks. And then tell them again, and then tell them again after that. And don't stop telling them, because it stinks and they need to hear it from you. And if they hear it from you, they'll back out. The season is long. It's 8 months long. A decision they've made now to save money, if it's embarrassing and stupid enough, they can go back on it because the money doesn't really matter. I said that was the last thought, but here's one more thought. This is cheap nonsense by an organization worth billions of dollars that is eventually going to be sold for probably maybe a record price for an NBA team, right? That's just the nature of it. They're going to make their money. So what billionaires do is they don't lose money. They're really good at it. It's how you stay a billionaire. But pointing to the salaries is not a way to suggest that the Blazers have saved money. Here's where you actually cut costs as a team. Salaries are fixed, basically. There's a salary cap and there's a luxury tax line. Unless you're going crazy over the luxury tax line, your expenses on salaries are kind of fixed. That's one bucket. $160 million. It's a big bucket. The way you save money as a basketball team, as an entity like this, is to cut costs at the stuff that isn't capped, the stuff that doesn't have a salary cap, the stuff that's outside of the basketball world, this stuff on the periphery. The Blazers have been doing stuff like this that has been less public. This is public. This is them embarrassing themselves. Make sure you remind them of how embarrassing it is. They're giving you a worse product, and their excuse is that they're going to be more efficient. Send them a bunch of emails. Be super efficient. Don't let them get away with this garbage. All right, let's talk about the schedule. But first, I want to tell you about Rocket Money. You have probably heard me tell you about Truebill, a favorite in the financial app world. Well, guess what? Truebill's got a new name. It's called Rocket Money. So why did Truebill change its name to Rocket Money? Well, here's what we heard. Truebill, now backed by Rocket Companies, has grown from a bill management app into a full-on personal finance empowerment tool that helps 3.4 million people with budgeting and lowering bills, canceling subscriptions, and more, saving each of their members on average $700 a year. And with all that growth comes the next evolution in Truebill's story. That's a new name. Bottom line, Rocket Money is everything that you loved about Truebill, but has a fresh new look and a fresh new feel. So start canceling your unused subscriptions and save money at rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba, or download the app from the Apple Store or from Google Play. All right. Blazers aren't doing themselves many favors. Here's the thing. They're going to play 82 basketball games regardless of where their broadcast team is. Let's talk about those 82 basketball games. Last week, the NBA released its schedule. I'll just say this up front. NBA schedule release is super duper nonsense. It's always the same thing. It's always the same thing. It really is. It's 82 games. You're going to play every team in the Eastern Conference at home and on the road. 41 games against, or not 41. You're going to play 41 road games, 41 home games. You're going to play every team in the East twice. You're going to play most of the teams in the Western Conference 4 times, except for 4 teams that you'll play thrice. And that's it. That's how it goes down every time. That's it. That's it. Like, there's important stretches. But it's so hard to pinpoint what will be monumentally important in February sitting here in August. It's not like necessarily like an NFL schedule where so many fewer games. You kind of know who you play, but the home and the road and the sort of rhythm of it and when you get your Thursday game and all those things, like that matters. In a sport like basketball where it's just forever, the NBA trying to make schedule release day a thing just rubs me a little bit, not the wrong way. Like, I don't have any problem with it. It's fine. But like, it strikes me as a little bit silly. But it is a fun sort of time when you get it to kind of look and be like, okay, what do they got cooking? So let's talk about what the Blazers got cooking. The things I tend to look at with this stuff is kind of like how it starts, how it ends, and the rest stuff. The NBA has made a very concerted effort over the last 5 years to reduce the amount of travel and reduce the number of back-to-back teams play. They just want, first of all, they want less excuses for you to hold your stars out on TV. They want less obvious rest games if they can avoid it. And there's enough science out there to suggest that the constant traveling is probably harder on your bodies. Play a really difficult 3-hour basketball game, fly 30,000 feet for 3.5 hours to another time zone, do it again the next night or do it again a day and a half later. There's probably some obvious injury prevention stuff that people smarter than me could tell you that just like reducing the amount of travel will help. And I think the NBA is after that, and I don't know. Do I applaud them for it? I think I golf clap them for it. I'm giving them a little golf clap. But they have reduced the number of back-to-backs and reduced miles traveled. Some of the way that they have done that is they've given the Blazers longer road trips. But they also have reduced back-to-backs. It used to be you played like 15, 18, 19 a year. The league average is now 13.3. The Blazers play slightly more than the league average at 14 total this season. No team has fewer than 12. No team has more than 15. Everybody's right in that range, 12 to 15. The whole league average is at 13. Blazers slightly above it. It's fine. Sure, I think you'd rather them be the team with 12, right? It is what it is. They aren't, but it's not like that's super egregious, to be quite honest. The other thing is miles traveled, and the Blazers have a disadvantage because, one, they are located far away. When you lose Seattle and when you lose Vancouver from the team, the closest team for the Blazers is Sacramento, and that is not a particularly close city. And the other thing is that the Northwest Conference has a really stupid geographic footprint, so traveling to OKC 4 times just is going to give the Blazers, you're guaranteed 4 games in Oklahoma City. That's far away. They should not be in the same division. Those teams are not close. Oklahoma City is not even, it's not in the northwest of anything. Maybe it's in the northwestern part of the county. It's not in the northwest of anything. Come on now. Minneapolis is far. Denver is far. These are far plane rides. The league used to treat Denver and Portland as their back-to-back partners, like those cities are close together. They're not particularly close together. If you've flown a certain airline that doesn't give me money, so they're not going to get buzz marketed here, but that's a big hub. You got to fly across the country. You might fly to Denver. It's two and some change to get there. It's not close. So the Blazers are always going to be at the top of the list for miles traveled. This year, they're second behind only Oklahoma City, in part because Oklahoma City also has to deal with that stupid geographic footprint of the Northwest Division where you have to play 4 games. And probably just some bad travel luck because they're close to the Texas teams and New Orleans at least enough. So just some bad travel luck for OKC that they are going to lead the league in miles traveled this year. The Blazers, a cool second. The league has reduced the amount of travel. And one way they've reduced the amount of travel, as I mentioned, is longer road trips. The Blazers have 3, count them 3, 6-gamers, including 2 before Christmas. 6-game road trips. 6 games in 10 days, 6 games in 12 days later in the year. That's a long time on the road. I'm really excited that the Allen Estate will not have to pay for broadcasters to travel on those 6-game, 12-day road trips. Congratulations to everyone there at Vulcan for saving that money. I hope you invest it more efficiently. In any case, the first of those 6-game road trips is November 4th to November 12th, is early in the season. It's games 8 through 14, or games 8 through 13, rather. That's a lot. That's a lot of games on the road. Better for overall travel, I think. Just talking to folks who work in the league, and I think in general, you'd rather just go travel, get them done, and get back. Like the fly to Minnesota, come back, fly to Denver, come back, fly to Sacramento, come back, fly to LA, come back, fly to that's almost worse for some folks. You'd rather just go out on the road and play every other day for 2 weeks and just keep it going, keep it rolling, and come on back. It's a challenge, but that's the game, right? The other thing that's so there's your back-to-back, slightly above league average. 3 6-game road trips. Those are long times on the road, and it's two before Christmas. Blazers get back December 23rd and have a couple of days off here at home, but that's a lot of travel. The Blazers have 8 games that are considered fresh or rest advantage games, according to PositiveResidual.com. That's slightly below league average, like most teams have a couple more fresh games, and they have 10 tired games where that's, they played the night before and the other team didn't, where the other team has a rest advantage. The Blazers have 10 rest disadvantage games, 10 tired games. That is slightly more than league average. So Blazers get a little bit worse. Some of that's just geography that you can't shake. Some of that is just unlucky. Some of that is the Lakers have an easier schedule rest-wise because they play teams in LA, and because they probably just get better schedule because it's the freaking Lakers, and that's how this league works. But so that's 18, either fresh games or tired games, 64 even. For the most part, the Blazers are going to play teams with relatively even rest schedules. That's not exactly how it works, because the Blazers will have some days off on these 6-game road trips, but if you've been on the road for 12 days, even if you have the same sort of amount of rest, that's a long time living out of a suitcase. They're not all created the same. The other things to look at for the Blazers: national TV games. They play just 3 this year on ESPN and TNT. They play a handful on NBA TV, but that's not a national TV game because that's a premium channel that not even everyone gets. And also blacked out here in Portland, so you can't even freaking watch it. So, it's... all of the games will be en route, but they will have 3 national TV games this year. They had 9 last year. 9 was below league average last year. 3 is just way down there. It's about marketing. The Blazers aren't particularly marketable. The league this year has said that all games, ABC, ESPN, and TNT, are fully flexible for the whole year. It used to be only until you got to the spring. You got to March, post All-Star break in March, you could start flexing teams out because it's this team stinks. We thought they were going to be good, and they're and the Lakers are terrible. Let's get them off of TV. Or typically it's damn, why did we put the Knicks on a game in March? That's mean. The Knicks have had a recently good season, but y'all have been around for the last 20 years for the most part. They've had a lot of undue national television games. Now, instead of waiting until March to flex them out, they can flex them out a little bit earlier, and that gives the league some leeway to put, if the Blazers are good and are surprisingly competitive, put them on TV. In the past, I just know this from being around, and like I said, talk to people who work in TV. The league loves, and Turner specifically, TNT loves Blazer broadcasting. They love to, broadcast games in Portland because you get that late game. The team has been typically competitive over the last 10 years, and the good crowd. You get a good crowd. You don't get a Clippers crowd, which is sparse or whatever and quiet. You get a good arena and all of those things. It's good for the league. So if the Blazers are good, the league's not going to have a problem flexing them in. It's just the Western Conference is loaded this year. It's a bunch of really good teams, and the Blazers get the short end. This is the sort of, I would say, this has more to do with perception of what the Blazers are in terms of general interest. They were bad last year, and the moves they made, while compelling, are compelling to diehards like you who are listening to this podcast. Jeremy Grant and Gary Payton don't really move the needle too much around the league. Giving securing Anthony Simons in the backcourt isn't a huge TV draw. The Blazers are going to be way better than they were last year, and they'll probably earn some, second half national TV games. We could talk about it then. I would say in general, having your games called by your home announcers is better than the national TV announcers, and that you really just want it for respect. But if the Blazers are going to call these games remotely, getting more on national TV is better because you get a better quality broadcast. Let's talk about the first 7 games of the regular season. The Blazers, like I said, have that 6-game road trip that begins November 4th, but they got 7 games before that. That's a big, important chunk of the schedule, the way I look at it. Let's talk about that to close the show. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. Still listening to Locked On Blazers. Let's talk about the Blazers beginning to this season. This is one thing, friend of the program, friend of mine, friend of yours, Jason Quick, veteran reporter, covered the team for a long time, more than 2 decades. When the schedule would come out, he would do the exercise of going through all 82 games and saying, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. And he'd be like, Richmond, what'd you get? What'd you get when you did it? I was like, I don't do that. And then so he would make me do it. The more we worked together, he'd make me do it. He would encourage me to do that. He didn't make me do it necessarily. He made me. But like he would encourage me to do that. And I would say like, oh, Jason, I'm at 45. What about you? It's like, oh, I'm at 47. Okay, like what's the difference? So we'd talk about it or whatever. I've gotten away from doing that because I don't think my prediction of late January, February, post-trade deadline and March stuff is going to hold up. I think the Blazers are going to, I've changed my over-under on them. I think they're a 42-win team. I think they're going to go 42-40. Seeing these 82 games hasn't changed my opinion, just like thinking about the league has changed my opinion. The schedule will sometimes bite you and will sometimes be a problem, but for the most part, every team in the league looks at their schedule and says, man, ours is hard. Oh, we have this brutal stretch. Oh, we have this, we have that. Every team in the league can point to it and complain. No problem. So instead of doing the exercise that Jason has encouraged me, I tend to lean on something that I learned also from a Blazers veteran, is that Terry Stotts used to, when he would talk to the team, he would never do this with the media, but he'd apparently do this all the time talking to the team, is break up the season into 5-game segments. And you want to go 3-2 in every segment. You win 3 out of 5, you're a really good team. You're winning 60% of your games. You're going to be very competitive if you win that number of games, right? Like you're going to find yourself in a great spot. So I'm somewhere in between the Stotts 5-game segment chunk and the Jason Quick go through all 82 exercise. Instead, I'm just breaking this up into little spots. And to me, the Blazers, it's road heavy. 8 of their first 13 are on the road, but that's because of that 6-game road trip. They start with 5 of 7. 5 of 7 here in Portland. Those 7 games are really, really crucial. Start on the road at Sacramento. That's a bummer because like the Kings are liable to be so bad at the end of the year because they're the freaking Kings. All I do is make fun of the Kings on this podcast. Like my number one thing, but for real, they're the Kings. They're gonna like by the end of the season, they're gonna be a mess. Or not even a mess. They're gonna be the 11th best team in the West. Early in the season, there's hope, there's health, there's all of these things. Like you don't want to open the year against a bad team, right? You want to get sort of like the good teams early, maybe. You don't know who you want to get early. That's why the 82 games thing doesn't matter. But at Sacramento to begin the season, it's like a not very good team, a winnable game, but it's everybody sort of the juice of the home opener and all that. That is no gift. The Blazers, lost their home opener to the Kings last year, but last year's totally different beast. Then home against Phoenix, at the Lakers. Lakers still might be a mess. That might be a valuable road game. Home against Denver, home against Miami, home against Houston, home against Memphis. Good to get a Memphis home game in there before they kind of find their stride. No Kyle Anderson, no Jaren Jackson Jr., certainly not in the first week of the season. They swapped out D'Anthony Melton for Danny Green. As much as I love Danny Green, I think that makes you worse. Memphis is going to be a little bit worse, but they might end up finding their stride because they've got, good young parts and they might figure it out. I think getting them early matters. I think Houston is like actively bad and you want to get them going, but Miami, Denver, Phoenix, those are all playoff teams. The Lakers are at least a team that employs LeBron James and Anthony Davis, even if they end up bad. That's not an easy road game necessarily, even if they end up bad. And Sacramento, a team that I don't think is very good, but you have to open the year with sort of that, like I said, the home opener juice. But then you go on the road. At Phoenix twice and a road back-to-back at Phoenix, at Miami, at Charlotte, at New Orleans, at Dallas. Those are nothing easy there, just because the Blazers have historically always kind of stunk in Charlotte. But none of those games are guaranteed. Like, you could say, like, oh, that's probably a win. Phoenix twice. You think you maybe split those just because it's hard to beat a team twice. At Miami's brutal. At New Orleans is tough. At Dallas is tough. Charlotte has always given just like a locale that has given the Blazers problems. These first 7 games with 5 at home, before you get on that road trip, before things get messy, before all of that nonsense, like you gotta find yourself in a good spot. You gotta find yourself in a good spot. Like when I look at this, I don't know if I'm like, oh yeah, like no problem. That's 5-2, baby. Like I don't think I see that necessarily. But regardless of my predictions, like you need to be 4-3. You need to win more than you've lost in those first 7 because then you go on the road and it's just going to be naturally difficult. It's just going to be naturally difficult. Like, if the Blazers come back after those first 13 games, 5-7 at home, 6 on the road, and they're like, 5-8 or whatever, it's not that big of a deal. They'll still have time to put themselves where they need to be and all those things. But like, if they're 5-8, they're 3 games under 500 and they got to get rolling. Like that's 13 games in. Usually like 25 games in, you kind of know who's good and who's not. That's halfway home to the kind of who's good and who's not range. And you have that 6-gamer to begin with. Like, you got to fatten up on those first 7 games. Five at 5 where you'll have the broadcasters in the building calling a game live, and they'll be able to do their jobs better, and it'll be worth the investment to allow them to do their jobs better. But that probably won't impact the Blazers too much because they can dap up Lamar and Kevin as they go out on the court. But like when I look at the schedule, what I see is like, oof, that's tough. And then things kind of soften up. They play a whole bunch of home games in January, kind of classic Blazers where the second half of the season they can maybe go on that patented Dame era run where they've kind of always done this, start slow and get going. But like, start slow and get going is how you end up a low-level playoff team. It's like it's how you finish 6th or whatever. To be like, to put yourselves in the mix, to not have a sprint and have to leave it all out on the court in March and the first week of April to even get yourself where you want to be postseason wise, like you just don't want to have to make that. You want to put yourself in a position where you do not have to leave it all out there. You want to put yourself in a position to be, say, okay, we're playing our best basketball, but we don't need to win 18 of 22 in order to finish 5th in the West or whatever. You want to just take care of what you can take care of. And that 6-game road trip is not something that you can say, oh yeah, no prob, 3-3, no prob. Like 3-3 is definitely doable, winnable games. New Orleans, at Dallas, winnable games. Certainly teams that are like about as good as the Blazers, but it's on the road. It's games 5 and 6 of a 6-game road trip. Those are hard. Phoenix up front, that's a good team. You're going to play them, 3 times in the first 10 games. Like that's, it's probably before the implosion in Phoenix if it's going to happen, right? Like you got to take advantage of the games you can take advantage of, and early home cooking. Early home cooking is the time to fatten up. It's the time to get going. That's my schedule talk. I'm still mad about the Blazers broadcast. I really like Kevin Calabro and Lamar Hurd, people I really respect professionally. I really like Brooke Olsendam, one of the nicest people, the true queen of Rip City. I'm pissed that someone is making their very public jobs harder. Send some emails, complain. Do it on my behalf. It's nonsense. That's your schedule talk. That's your broadcast talk. Later this week, we are going to have shows. Scheduling notes. This is Monday, August 22nd show. It's going to come out Sunday evening. If you're listening to this right away or watching on YouTube, thanks. I appreciate you. Thanks for being in on the ground floor. Tell your friends to do the same. I have some stuff going on this week such that the shows are going to come out at the end of this week. The next shows will come out Thursday and then Friday. So look for those. I've been on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday publishing schedule, but such is life. I'm not going to get into it. Such is life. It's going to be this Monday show. Look for Thursday show, a show in your feed Thursday, a show in your feed Friday. Look for those 2. Tell your friends about this show. We're rolling along. We're having fun. It's, we're kind of mad at the Blazers maybe a little bit, but still we're having fun on the show. Rolling along all August long, and then we'll get back to 5 days a week, and we'll keep it rolling then. So make it a part of daily routine. Make it your first listen when their show's available, and then come back and do it again. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.